Hello and welcome to English Digest. I'm Seb.
And I'm Elsie.
And today we're talking about an issue that I'm sure you all have opinions about.
That's right. We're talking about school start times. What time class starts and whether this is too early.
A very important topic. So what time do school days start in Taiwan, Elsie?
Around 7:30 to 8 o'clock.
What? That's really early.
Yep.
At least for me coming from the UK.
So when does school start in the at UK schools?
At mine, school started at about 9:30, but that was just registration. We all met in our form classes with our form instructor, who took attendance and told us about news and activities that affected our class. Actual classes didn't start until 9 a.m., but you would get in a lot of trouble if you skipped registration. Let's get into our topic and instructions for today's topic-based writing. So recently a news article was published titled Almost 90% of interviewed students said they favored starting school later in the day, which shows how many students feel that current school class times are too early and would like to push back their school day by 1 to 2 hours. Write an article of at least 120 words about this topic with 2 paragraphs. The first should explain whether you believe schools should start later, as well as give reason for your position on the subject. The second paragraph should give examples from your personal experience that support your point of view.
最近呢，有一则新闻报道，标题是近90%受访的学生赞成延后到校时间。那内容提到不少高中生觉得目前到校时间太早，表示希望可以延后1至2个小时。请根据这个主题写一篇英文作文，文长至少要120个单词。
Essentially then, we're going to be writing an essay, specifically an argumentative essay, an essay that is making an argument. Now, we're not talking about fighting, we're not talking about shouting at each other. An argument is an opinion or a point of view. An argumentative essay is a piece of writing that takes a particular stance on a particular issue. For example, whether the government should raise taxes or whether smoking cigarettes should be illegal. In this style of writing, you want to provide a logical, structured argument that convinces the reader of your point of view is the correct one.
没错，我们今天要写的呢，就是一篇论说文 an argumentative essay。所以呢，论点要明确，而且要有理由和例子来做支撑，不能够空讲论点而已哦。所以这边呢，还说到文分2段，第一段说明你是否赞成延后到校时间，并说明原因。那第二段，请你举自身的经验为例子，来解释你赞成或反对的理由。
So before we go any further, Elsie, are you convinced? Do you think earlier school times are better, or do you wish you could have stayed in bed a little bit longer when you were young?
Now I can decide. After we discuss the benefits of earlier school times and later school times. Maybe I'll decide later.
Yeah, okay. Maybe we'll have to see how our essay is going to develop in today's topic writing. And that brings us on to developing an approach. Of course, we need to work out how we're going to get these ideas flowing and put them into an essay. So what do we need to know for writing an argumentative essay?
第一个呢，根据提示啊，本文属于的是议论型的议题性质的英文写作，所以就是我们刚刚说的，它是一个论说文类型。那一般而言呢，当要写此类与新闻议题相关的作文的时候呢，可以思考这个新闻的背景以及可能造成的影响，接着再决定文章的切入点。那常见的架构呢是 introduction 引言，可以简述新闻内容跟其所引发的议题讨论，并说明你或专家对此新闻议题的了解和看法。再来就是到 body 主体的部分了，可以进一步深入分析这一则新闻所引发的正反面讨论或是成因。接着你要表达自己对此事件的观点，并说明它所造成的影响。再来就到 conclusion 结论的地方，可以提出对此事件的反省检讨，或者是如何改善的建议，也可以扼要的重申自己的立场。
Writing a good introduction is key if you want to get your readers to agree with you, but there's more than one way of doing so. For example, you could begin by stating your opinion about earlier or later school times. For example, I think school starts too early, and we should begin class 2 hours later. Here's why. Okay, that's a very simple introduction that states your opinion and, says that you're going to give some reasons. That's not the only way, though. For a more detailed, if longer introduction, you can use a 3-step approach I like to call HBT: hook, background, and thesis statement. As the name suggests, there are 3 elements to this style of introduction. The first is the hook, an engaging sentence that gets your readers' interest and makes them curious about the subject. The word hook actually refers to a fish hook, 鱼钩, and it's just like a fish hook. It hooks into your mouth and it pulls you into the story, okay? So it's just like in fishing, you're pulling the fish in, you're pulling your readers in, you're getting their interest.
没错，所以我们要在文章一开头的时候用一个好的 hook 来勾住你的读者的注意力。So what would be a good hook for today's essay?
Glad you asked. I'd pick something like nearly 9 out of 10 Taiwanese students think that school days start too early, a study shows. Personally, I think this is a great hook because we're showing immediately that a large number of students are unhappy with their school routines right now. That makes the reader ask themselves, but why? After the hook is B, the background. As you might have guessed, the background is where we offer relevant background information about the issue. This can also help you explain why your topic is different. Background information might include the details of the study, past debates about school times in Taiwan, or some opinions school kids have about school start times. Last is T, your thesis statement. We've talked about this already in several other episodes. To recap, your thesis statement is a sentence that sums up your stance on the issue or that makes your main point. For example, I support later school times, or I think early school start times are fine.
Okay, a lot of good advice there. So, Seb, can you give us an example introduction?
That's a good idea. Okay, so here is a basic one using HBT. Nearly 9 out of 10 Taiwanese students think that school days start too early, a study shows. The findings continue an ongoing debate about whether Taiwanese schools should open 1 to 2 hours later than their current 7:30 start time. I believe that this should happen so that students are better rested and more focused in class. Okay, so we've actually got 3 sentences there, and each one is doing one of those letters, HBT. So nearly 9 out of 10 students, that's our hook. That's an interesting fact about Taiwanese students and about the subject we're talking about. Our second sentence gives us some background. So it says, we've been arguing for a while about whether school times should change in Taiwan. And the third one is our thesis statement. So this is showing that the writer supports changing things and it also gives some reasons why that is, which if we're writing this introduction, we want to write more about those reasons later on in the body of the passage.
OK， 所以同学们可以试试看用这个 HBT 的方法来开头。那再来呢，第二个我们要注意的是以本次主题写作来说，第一段你必须要先简述新闻探讨的议题，以及这个议题上你所抱持的态度是什么。那第二段呢，再以自身的经验为例来佐证你的观点。你所举出的亲身经验越是具体，就越能够支持你的论点，并且提高文章的说服力哦。再来第三个，写作的时候要切记文法、结构、字词选用还有修辞等技巧，固然可以替你的文章加分，但与其用这种比较艰深然后不协调的字词，或是复杂易错的句子，还不如用简单易懂的字词和清楚有把握的句子来搞定这篇文章哦。先求能够清楚而且正确的表达自己的想法，再试着运用字词跟句式的变化来增加文章的深度。所以呢，不熟的难字你就不要去使用。
All right, now we understand how to write an awesome argumentative essay. Let's move on to brainstorming.
那看完上述的说明，是不是觉得稍微有一点概念，但是还不清楚该如何下笔呢？没有关系，我们先把架构图像化之后，再填入想法，文章的雏形很快就会浮现了。所以呢 ，we see a picture here。最上方你看到的是 news summary， 也就是去简单叙述新闻的内容。再来有3个箭头分出来，最左边的这个是 for the change or against it， 也就是你是赞同还是不赞同的。再来要给原因了，好，所以中间你看到的是 why 这一大格。接下来呢，你看到的是 my experience， 也就是要你用自身的经验来佐证。所以呢，也就是回到我们刚刚提示里面说的，第一段说明你是否赞成，然后要有原因。在第二段，请你用自身的经验和例子来解释。
Exactly. So this news summary, we can see, is actually doing part of what I explained in the introduction. It's giving us a hook immediately. We already have our hook. We don't need to think about that because we know that there's this interesting fact about students. You can also think about what context is this happening in? What has been said recently about school start times? Or you could use the why section, why is this news summary important, to write the rest of your introduction. Why are we interested in this information? The first bubble, thesis statement, you can just state whether you are for or against. Or you can also give some basic reasons. So, I'm against the change because I think we need more time to study before class, for example. You could add that in there. If you do this, then you should explain your opinion later in the essay. Okay, so if you're going to mention something in the introduction, say, I support having later school times because we should sleep later, then it's probably best in the body of your essay to talk more about that reason. Okay, your introduction needs to fit the body of your essay. Otherwise, it won't make sense. Lastly, we've got my experience. So remember, in our instructions, they said to write about your personal experience and how it relates to this topic. So try to think about this news summary and how it might affect you, or how you might feel about it, or how your past might relate to this story. Okay, so now that we have some ideas out there, I think it's time for us to move on to our outline, to start organizing our ideas. Now, to recap, outlines are important because we need to have some structure for our essays to be convincing and to be well formulated. Okay, so some people say that you can write an essay just by putting your pen to paper and writing. And if you have lots of experience, this can work. But I think especially when you're writing about something new or writing in another language, you can get confused and you can start to go off topic. Or you can write a really long introduction and not have time to finish writing it. So an outline will really help you get your ideas organized so you know how much to talk about each part of your essay. So we're using our same basic structure here that we normally use for outlines. We've got two topic sentences and some supporting ideas to follow up, to add more detail to those topic sentences. So Elsie, why don't you tell us about our first topic sentence?
OK， 所以呢，再次提醒同学哦，你从这个 brainstorming 延伸下来到 outline 这个步骤是非常重要的哈，这样你才不会在写作的时候呢写太多或写太少。好，主题句第一个，我们看到的是呢 Taiwanese students recently took a survey about school start times。再来我们看到 A, almost 90% of them said they should start at a time between 8:30 and 9:30。接下来 Many people support the idea, but I don't. 所以作者在这边表明立场。好，开头之后叙述完新闻之后，在这边表明他的立场，他是不同意的。再来 C, current school hours are needed to cover everything students need to learn. 这边作者提出了反对的原因，因为呢，这个到校的时间比较早，因为 这么长的在校时间才可以让学生学到所有他们应该要学的东西。再来 D, students already barely have enough time. 学生能利用的时间已经不多了，所以如果还要缩短，那就不好了。那这样的铺陈到了第二段，需要利用实际的例子来说明时间不够用的状况以及后果，再呼应说明为什么现在这么早到是一件好事。
Exactly. Now, this is a really strong first paragraph, actually, if we write this out in more detail, because the writer has given an opinion and lots of reasons to back up that opinion. Actually, this could work as an essay on its own. However, in our second one, we're going to be talking about the writer's personal experience. Now, you don't always want to write about your personal experience in essays, but it can be a really good tool because it shows that you have authority to talk about this. It shows your human experience. It shows why this really affects people rather than just talking about, statistics or what percentage of people feel a certain way. So we've got personal experience here. And our second topic sentence is, the self-study period in the morning is a good example. Okay. My teachers weren't always able to finish lessons during their class periods. They have so many things to cover for our exams. They need to use the self-study period to give us more information, and we will fall behind if school starts later. Okay, so really we can imagine that this essay is going to be written for other people at the writer's school because they're talking about their experience but also how it affects everybody at the school. We get a sense that it's going to be very difficult for the teachers who have to educate the students, but it's also going to be difficult for the students too, not because they will be tired, but because they will do poorly in their exams or they won't be ready for their final exams.
Yeah, I gotta say, this student here is a hardworking student.
Sounds like a very hardworking student. Or we could say a very rational student or a very practical student.
Right.
They might not be the best student, at taking tests, but they clearly understand how time management works because they're worried about falling behind. So two things I like about this section is that it humanizes the problem. It gives it human experience and creates sympathy for the teachers. They have to work very hard. They have to teach a lot. So they need that extra time to finish the syllabus. And it also hypothesizes a negative outcome if times are changed. Now, when we have a hypothesize, we imagine something that could happen in the future. It won't definitely happen, but it could happen. So, to convince the reader, what the writer is doing is they are saying, this is one thing that could happen if we don't start early. We will fall behind and we will do badly. So that's another very good convincing point. And lastly, we have our concluding sentence. It's important for teachers and students to have enough time to go through everything in class, so the time should stay the same. That seems like a very rational argument to make, doesn't it?
没错，他在最后呢，再次写出他自己的这个 point of view， 然后去呼应他前面提到的，他是不同意学校时间变短。
Exactly. Okay, let's take a break here and then let's look at two examples of how we can turn this into a great essay. Basic sample. Recently, Taiwanese students took a survey about school start times. School days currently begin at 7:30 a.m., but almost 90% of students said they should start at a time between 8:30 and 9:30. While many people support this idea, I have to disagree. I think the current school hours are needed in order to cover everything we have to learn. Students already barely have enough time as it is. The self-study period at the start of the day is a good example. My teachers aren't always able to finish lessons during their class periods. They have lots of things to teach, so we students can pass exams. Therefore, they sometimes use the self-study period to give us more information. If school starts later, we might fall behind. I think it's important that teachers and students have enough time to go through the lesson material. Thus, the school day should stay the same. We've already talked about the structure and main ideas of this passage, so let's take a closer look at some of the vocabulary that it used.
好的，那首先呢，我们看到 take a survey about something， 代表的是做了关于某事的调查，好，动词搭配的是 take 这个字要特别注意哦。再来呢，我们看到作者用 while 来带出自己的想法，因为自己的想法跟大家的想法不一样，好，所以用 while 也就是 although 的意思来带出它的转折。So while many people support this idea, I have to disagree. 虽然大家都是支持的，但是我必须要反对。那再来呢，他提出的理由里面有一句话是 Students already barely have enough time. Barely 这个副词呢，代表几乎不，也是学生们的时间几乎快不够用了。
We also have to cover a subject. Now, you might know already that to cover something is 盖起来. So, you could cover a coffee cup with the lid, or you could cover your bed with a blanket. Here, we're using it in a different way. We're talking about covering a subject, and that means to talk about, study, or discuss a particular topic. Today's math class covered basic algebra, for example. That's one example of using covered. So when we're using cover, we mean that the content of something is on a certain subject. We've also got self-study period. Now, that's a time in school that you have to work independently on school projects and homework, or maybe prepare for tests. So self is, it's normally 自己 or it's 自 something. So when you self-do something, you do something on your own. Okay, so self-study, self-discipline, etc. Things that you control about yourself. Okay, let's move on to the second sample now and look at a more advanced way of discussing this issue. Advanced sample. A recent survey of students from Taiwanese high schools showed that nearly 90% support pushing back the start time for their school days. While school currently starts with a 30 to 40-minute self-study period, beginning at 7:30 a.m., the overwhelming majority of those surveyed said that it should instead start at 8:30, 9, or even 9:30 a.m. I wholeheartedly agree that school currently starts too early, and believe a later start time would benefit students in numerous ways, not least of which is allowing for a full night's sleep for developing young minds. While there are plenty of arguments to be made for this change, my own experiences speak loudest for me. Though I do my best to be a diligent student, I can't count the number of times I've nodded off during early morning classes due to not getting enough sleep the night before. For the first few periods of the day, I can barely focus, and I've developed a caffeine habit out of a critical need to stay awake in school. I can't go to bed earlier either because of the hours of homework I have to complete every night. I know this is hampering my development, but on my own, there's little I can do to change the system. I shouldn't have to prioritize my education over my health. That's why I support the proposed change. I want to be able to balance these two aspects of my life. Okay, so a slightly different approach here. Firstly, because the author actually gives the whole first paragraph to talk about the issue at hand and to give lots of context for the issue and just to state their opinion. They don't actually go into all of the different reasons why it's better to stay late. And then in the second paragraph, they use their personal experience to explain, give all the reasons why they support changing the times. So this kind of reminds me a bit of a kind of news writing called op-eds. And that's when people write essays that give their opinion on a specific topic in the news. Often, they might use their own experiences if they're talking about something that affects them. And you can see here, this isn't, it's not informal. It's not saying, I don't like this, so it shouldn't happen. it's saying, look, these are some real problems that I face. I'm really tired. I need to drink caffeine so that I can stay awake. And I have loads of work to do every night, so I have to go to bed late as well. And all of these are good reasons for starting later. This person is making a very strong argument. And just as they say in the article, their own experiences speak loudest about their opinion on changing start times.
没错，所以他用到 My own experiences speak loudest for me. 接着用自身的例子来佐证早起到校对精神啦还有健康不好的地方是哪里。还有一开头啊，他用到的 wholeheartedly， 我们也可以把它学起来。wholeheartedly 它常常跟动词 agree 连用，是加强语气的哦，表示说话者全心全意的赞同某建议或是议题。所以呢，作者相信延后到校这个在许多方面对学生而言都是有益处的。然后他讲到A later start time would benefit students in numerous ways, not least of which is allowing for full night's sleep for developing young minds. 他用到的 not least 表示的是特别是尤其是，用来强调特定情境或某项事物中最应该被注意的部分。那这句话里面的关系代名词 which 指的是前面所提到作者相信延后到校时间会对学生有益的许多方面。
Exactly. We also saw this word caffeine as well. They said, I've developed a caffeine habit or a caffeine addiction, we could even say. And caffeine is a drug which appears in drinks like coffee and tea. It's a drug that keeps you awake and a bit more focused, but sometimes can make you nervous or too energetic. So this person is saying they're using this to stay awake later, which I think it's okay to have some caffeine. Well, I honestly have caffeine every day, but I don't think it's okay when you need it to get through the day. And that seems to be what this person is doing.
Yeah, and they're still in high school.
And yes,
so I don't
exactly.
think that's good for their health.
Yeah, it might not be very good for their health. Okay, that's all the time we have for this passage. I hope that's given you guys some good ideas. Think about other ways that early school times are impacting your experience in school. Are they helping you get through the day? Are they helping you prepare for tests? Or are they making it difficult for you to focus? What else might be affecting you? You guys can continue to brainstorm that and work on your own essays. And we will be seeing you again after Lunar New Year when we will be continuing with more translation, more topic writing, and all of that great stuff. So, you guys have a happy Lunar New Year. Have a great time with your families, and we will see you again after the break.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.